Welcome back to the Career Tipper Podcast. I'm your host, Michelle Beatty, Professional Development Strategist. During episode 3, the Create to Connect conversation continues with digital strategist and content media producer, Bess Auer. Bess, welcome to the Career Tipper Podcast. Please tell the listeners about yourself and the work that you do.
Well, thank you for having me on, Michelle. I'm excited to be here and talk with you and your listeners. So I am the founder and host of Florida BlogCon, which is the Florida Blogger and Social Media Conference. We started back in 2010. And so for the last decade, I've had the privilege of helping educate Florida's bloggers and influencers and social media influencers and marketers and small business owners. And then I like to say in my other life, I was also the founder of Florida Swim Network, which my husband's a swim coach, and I was sitting poolside. And one day we decided to live stream an age group swim meet. And boy, it took off. We were live streaming age group amateur sports before anybody else was. This was also back in 2009, 2010. So the last decade, I've spent doing digital things and building up 2 different types of communities that were all centered around the state of Florida.
I think it's awesome. So, what was the genesis of your passion and commitment to building these platforms?
You know, I spent 17 years as an educator. I was in the classroom teaching English to middle school students before I discovered a love of blogging and all things social media, and then branched out into that. But I always consider myself to just be continuing that education track that I was on. Instead of, educating students, I was educating adults and bloggers and influencers on best practices. But really, I was born and raised here in the state of Florida, and both of those communities were very organic and essential to Florida. For FL BlogCon, we had a saying that we were this was a conference by Florida bloggers, for Florida bloggers. We really emphasized building up the blogosphere here locally. We only had vendors that were local. We had sponsors that were local. Speakers were all from the state of Florida. And then switching over to Florida Swim Network, that was our mission, was spotlighting the swimmers and coaches and swim teams in the state of Florida. Now, fortunately, we had some really big names. We had the Ryan Lochte's, the Elizabeth Beisels. We had, 6 Olympians on the U.S. Olympic team back in 2012. And then I believe we had 8 maybe on the 2016. And then we had another, I believe it was 4 in 2021. But from the state of Florida all over, we had, I believe it was over 50 athletes competing at the Olympic Games, representing all sorts of different countries, from Russia to countries in South America to Trinidad and Tobago. So we had the honor of really taking pride. We called it Team Florida. And we got all the swim teams in the state of Florida to really rally behind all their Olympians. So really rallying behind our state here in Florida. It was really a passion of mine, and it has served me very well.
Yes, I look at you as do you watch Hometown with Aaron and Ben Napier? Have you
I
seen
do
any of their
not.
shows? Well, they rebuild small towns, right? And their model has now been duplicated. I feel like you are that for Florida bloggers, like for creatives and community. You're like, I'm gonna give you a map, a roadmap to how to empower community, how to connect with other creatives, how to explore your creative while being local. Like, I feel like you need a whole billboard, like with your picture, like best local, the whole thing.
So it was funny. The very first year that we had the Florida Blogger Conference, we got 2-time Emmy-winning speaker Mark Middleton to talk. We had Jeanette Johnson, who was one of the biggest fashion bloggers in the country at the time. We had Rochelle Lucas, who was a big travel blogger. And it was funny because people said, Bess, if this does well, you can go out and get the really big names. And I'm like, we have big names right here in Florida. We have the movers and shakers here in Florida. So I really kind of took offense to that.
I remember you being very passionate at Florida BlogCon, saying on the stage, you're like, "We are a big deal." I'm like, "Okay, Bess," like you were much sincere about that. So yeah,
Yeah.
for sure. Will you tell us about your latest venture, Unio?
Yeah. So Unio is a result of those two communities. So I spent a decade with Florida BlogCon. I spent over a decade with Florida Swim Network. And even though I'm not really involved with either of those two, I've exited both communities. I'm kind of an emeritus advisor with both of them. But during the lockdown, I had a lot of time to reflect. And so I actually sat down and started kind of writing a book. You know, a lot of people, it's very cliche, oh, I'm writing a book using my time during lockdown, but I really spent some time thinking about, you know, the lessons I learned about building community. And at first I was going to call it the big book of everything I've ever learned. And I didn't think it was going to be that long, but it actually panned out to where I was like, wow, you know, I learned some really great lessons from other people while building these communities. I think that I can then pass those on to other people. So that was kind of the genesis of Unio. And Unio stands for the art of intentional community building. And so everything in this book is all about intentionally building your community, from the messaging that you do to the tools and technology that you use to even the types of members that you're going to attract. So it really was a passion project, but I was really pleasantly surprised that there's some real value in there. So it was nice to be able to share what I've learned with others, because I mean, that's what I've always been about, educating others and helping others.
Yeah, you're definitely a teacher at your core. That's for sure. Will you tell the listeners more about the guide? I pre-ordered mine, so I'm excited. It comes out November 3rd.
First.
First, sorry. Okay,
Yep.
first, November 1st. But yes, please tell us more about the guide.
Yeah, so we start off with just the anatomy of a community. The three tenets of community, which are environment, economics, and the social aspects of a community. If any one of those three tenets isn't working, your community probably will not thrive for very long. And then we move into the reasons why somebody becomes a member of your community. Now, when I say community, it has a pretty broad spectrum, right? So we're all members of communities. We have our family community, obviously, that is mandated. That's not voluntary unless you choose to estrange yourself from your family. You have your, you know, if you're a student, you have your school community, your work community. And then we have those communities that we join voluntarily. And sometimes it's in the form as a customer or a client of a certain business that we like to give our patronage to. And so, stepping back from the community builder side or the small business owner, there are certain things that we can do to make sure that we are attracting those particular members that we want to be, those customer avatars. And the book talks a lot about identifying your customer avatars and then how to develop a mission statement that really reaches them and, you know, resounds with them. Because if you are not, they're not going to stay members of your community for very long. So we talk about the reasons they become a member, and then what you can do as a community builder to keep them staying a member or a fan or a customer. And then we even go to the 5 types of members you will find in every community there is. The teachers, the cheerleaders, the how can I help you, the naysayers, and then even those that I call the waiters and watchers. So I go into in depth about each one of those archetype, types of members that are in that community, and talk about the characteristics of them and then strategies that you can employ to make sure that they are happy, productive members of your community. And then the last part of the book talks about threats, because obviously I want to help people scale their communities for the long term. So what are some of the threats? So there are internal threats, there are external threats. So I go into all of those and offer some strategies to kind of shore up your community to make sure you can survive for the long term. So there you go. That's what Unio is about.
No, I think it's helpful, especially with everyone being, it's a general statement, but a lot of people deeming themselves as influencers, and a lot of people have this digital landscape that they're trying to take up more claim stake in. So I think it's just, I'm looking forward to reading it because I think it will give a refresher of what's authentic to community. because I think longevity is important. And I think some people are in it genuinely for the long haul, not just for the build and sell moment. So I'm excited for that.
Well, as a person that's done a lot of social media campaigns and been a lot of consulting for other companies doing theirs, um, recently, last few years, you've seen the rise of what is familiarly called bro marketing. Are you familiar with that term, Michelle? Bro marketing?
No,
Okay.
educate.
So, bro marketing is kind of the pay to play model. You do the like campaign. So, you're paying Facebook to gain those fans. You might even buy them from click farms. You are doing all paid posts, all paid advertising. And as soon as you don't pay for something, your organic reach, you find out, is very, very small. And so the bro marketing, and I think it got that term from self-appointed gurus being up there. Hey, bro, I can show you how to do the best, how to get your
Yeah.
community going. So I think that's where it came from. But I've seen everybody talking about this decline in organic reach. And yes, it is true. I mean, obviously the algorithms do, lessen your reach, but if you have really put in the work, if you have done the work to attract the right customer avatars that are truly interested and have a passion for your same mission and your same purpose and your same why. And then if you properly form your message and format your graphics and your video, and it all is going to advancing your why, then your organic reach is going to be just fine. For Florida Swim Network, at the last Olympics, I was checking in with the guys that are running it now. I'm like, how's it going? What's going on there? And they gave me access to the back end because they knew I was getting ready to start talking about Unio and using your organic community. And oh my gosh, this is a community. I think they have like 23,000 Facebook fans, maybe 24. I mean, let's face it, they're the state of Florida swimming. They really shouldn't have 1 million fans, right? I mean, there's not that many swim fans in the state of Florida, but the fans that were there were so interested in the Olympics because we had Caleb Dressel, we had Bobby Fink that were winning gold medals over and over. And when they would post about these guys, they were reaching, I kid you not, like 3 million people organically. They were not boosting a thing because they didn't have to. And so I was like, okay, that is proof that if you stay true to your mission, spotlighting the Florida swimmers, really showcasing them, and you are putting up content that your audience really wants and resonates with, your organic reach is going to be just fine. So I think that's one of those lessons that I really want to pass on through Unio.
I get it. I get it. Thank you so much. Now, what are a few ongoing tasks that you feel influencers should keep in mind when building with intention? Like you shared nuggets along the way, but what are like I don't know, just some insight, some foundational pieces?
Yeah, so one of them is to know your why. And I'm going to use Florida Swim Network because that was really my learning curve with that. I was not a swimmer growing up. I married into it. My husband's a swim coach. My son was a swimmer. And we started live streaming this swim meets. And the very first meet, I was sitting on deck, and I mean, it was such a poor broadcast. I think it was called Justin TV or one of those, and it was called webcasting at the time. And we actually had one of those eyeball cameras because nobody had like cameras made for webcasting it. And we set it up on the speaker that the announcer was there. And anytime he spoke, the thing shook, and I was having to turn it manually and hoping I was getting the. But anyway, it's such a horrible broadcast. But people on deck were like, hey, Joe, what is Bess doing? And he's like, oh, she's webcasting the meet. If you go to Justin TV, you can watch it. And so word spread. We had 300 unique viewers of that first really, really awful swim meet. And that's when we said, oh, we've got a company here. We've got a business here. So we started Florida Swim Network. We reserved the domain name. We started broadcasting age group meets, not Olympians. Ryan Lochte happened to be in that first meet. That was an anomaly, but age group meets. I'm talking like 12 and under kids that normally nobody would want to watch. And so we found out very quickly that if we live stream and really focused on the kids, people wanted to see that. So we're like, great, we are live streamers. That is our business. That is our reason we live stream. That was not our why. Swim meets. Michelle, have you ever been to a swim meet?
Years ago, not
All right.
recent, like in
They
high
are
school.
they are awful. Apologies to all the swimmers and swim coaches out there, but you all know what I'm talking about. As a parent, you go sit in the hot sun all day long to watch your kids swim for maybe 2 minutes. I mean, they are long, long, long. So that was not our why. We were not there to bake in the sun and watch them go back and forth, but we didn't know what our why was really until after one championship meet, a man named Mr. Ordaz, Eric Ordaz's father. Eric had won at this little junior national meet, and Mr. Ordaz came up to us where we were sitting with all our cameras and stuff with tears streaming down his face. He gave Joe and I both hugs, and he was thanking us. And we're like, oh, and he goes, I want to tell you, my grandparents live in Panama, and they have never, Eric's grandparents live in Panama, and they have never seen him swim before today. That was a light bulb for us. We were connecting families. That was our why. So we had parents that were serving over in the Middle East that would message us and be like, hey, I'm not going to be able to be there, but I am going to watch the live stream. Can you make sure to give a shout out to my son when he's swimming? Because we commentated, we had a chat room going on. That was our why. When we finally got pulled up because Florida Swim Network finally caught the attention. We had so many fans that we on our live streams that we caught the attention of ESPN, and they hired us to do some of the college meets and stuff. But we would have at the University of Florida, Vanessa Rousseau, who lived in South Africa, her son swam at the University of Florida. She never got to see him swim. So she would jump in the chat room and she'd be like, hey, can you zoom in on my son? I haven't seen him in 4 months. So we would zoom in on her son. So we were not really doing swim meets. We were connecting families. And as soon as we understood that why, what we were really doing, everything lined up. Everything we posted, everything that we said, every email that we sent, did it further that mission of connecting families in the swim community or not? And it made things very, very easy. So I think for the influencers, the small businesses, the marketers out there, you've got to understand what your why is. If you're selling something, people are not a fan of you just to give you money. They're a fan of you because of what you're doing, why you're doing it, how you're doing it. So make sure you understand. And if you don't really know, I really strongly suggest do a survey of your customers. Ask them, why are you our fans? What is it you think we do? How do you think we do it? And you will find out tons of information that will only improve your community and improve your marketing.
Thank you for that share. I think that's awesome. Will you finish this sentence and share your perspective about what you chose? Create to connect to.
So create to connect to community. I mean, that's my easy one. And what I mean by that is, Michelle, I think you're like me. You probably get bored kind of easily if you have too much downtime. And so I think it's human nature to want to create something. And I think most of us want to create something that might be appreciated by others. And so for me, creating something that connects others, for example, the live streams, creating an interactive live stream where members can chat back and forth with each other, or Florida BlogCon, where we have this incredible conference where people can come together and share ideas. And, you know, we always had a mission statement that we posted, or not a mission statement, a philosophy statement that we posted in each of our Florida BlogCon guides. And that was, this is the one day where we set aside any competition and we share our best practices, because the internet's big enough for everybody. So for me, I think when we create something, if it's those meeting places or if it's content that's going to connect people, that's what's important for me to be able to create those communities.
I fully agree, and I love it. It's true. You are. I'm telling you, you need a billboard, and then community, whatever that is, Bess. It needs to be going down the I-4 corridor.
Oh, for your Orlando fans, make sure that you are checking out Patrick Green's art billboards. Have you heard about those yet?
Oh,
Okay, so Patrick Green is kind of within the art world here. He has a radio show on 90 points, not 90.7 on WMFE. No, sorry, WPRK. I had to think of which one he had. WPRK. And it focused on the art world and kind of the cool things that are happening around Orlando. Well, he decided to have a huge art show. But with the current, I don't want to say the C word because I don't want this to be depressed and breached at all. But with the state of being where people are not really inclined to meet in person to certain places, he said, how can we do an outdoor one? So he has, I believe it's 5 billboards up and down the I-4 corridor that are an art show billboard. They're going to showcase different artists' work on each one of them. So he's like, we're going to have 100,000 people a day driving by to see this artwork. That's a pretty big art show. So I love that he's doing that. What a great way to connect community, especially with those who may not be familiar with some of our local artists.
I love that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love that. Oh, okay. Well, I'm gonna have to follow that and go and observe it myself. Oh my goodness. Okay, so what are ways that you practice and connect to being creative?
Oh my goodness. I write most days. But you know what? I think if I were to go back in my life, start over with a career choice, I would love to go to Full Sail University and do video editing. I found just so much fun editing video and creating video content that I'm now, in addition to just using my words, text written, I'm finding the visual and the video to be a great way to create as well. So I'm finding a new passion and a new love right there.
Oh, well, kudos to you. Not there yet. I'm not there yet, but I will get there eventually. So, Bess, will you please share how the listeners can get in touch with you and they can purchase the guide?
Yeah, so buildwithunio.com, and Unio is UNIO. And that actually, that's so the name, it sounds weird, I know. But Unio is actually a classification of a mollusk, so a clam, an oyster. And I like that because it also in Latin means union and coming together. So on the book cover, it's actually an open oyster shell. We had an award-winning artist, Marla E., local artist here, actually visualized it for me. I said, I want an open clam shell, but I want it to be artsy, and she nailed it. And the reason we chose a clam shell or an oyster shell is because mollusks of the Unio class actually build their shells, their protective shells from the inside out. And I thought, okay, that's kind of what we community builders are doing, right? We're starting with ourselves and trying to grow outward. And then the whole idea of a pearl being formed when there's some type of strife or friction. I like the idea of anytime we weather, obstacles or challenges in our life, we come out a little stronger, a little better. So that's where Unio came from. That's why it's the name of the book. So it's Unio, the Art of Intentional Community Building. You can find it at buildwithunio.com. You can also connect with me on Twitter, my favorite platform, at Bess_Auer, AUER.
I giggle because I remember when you went on this anti all these email platforms, and you can only email with you you can only communicate through adding to through Twitter or Facebook Messenger, and I'm like, Bess, but you're like, I can't handle all this.
I'm still there. I still only use my email for social logins. I get, Michelle, literally 4 emails a day. It is bliss. Now, I get a ton of messages through Facebook, through LinkedIn, through Twitter, through Instagram, but those are from people I want to have messages from. So I don't get the spam there. So I hope they never allow spam there. So for me, it has worked wonderfully. I've never had a business or a group that wants to work with me tell me that they won't message me through one of those. So if you want to give it a try, I recommend it.
I just always admire that because the autoresponder used to just tickle me. You're like, if you want an answer.
I stuck to my guns.
Yes, you did. Do you have any parting thoughts before I sign off?
Oh my goodness. Invest in where you live. And we've heard that so much recently, but I think it has never rung truer. Um, we have all been spending a lot of time at home. And I mean, my husband and I have been doing renovations, home renovations, because we're here, but invest in those home communities as well. We can all make the world a much nicer place by getting out and meeting our neighbors, finding a local group to join, even if it's virtually through Facebook. So I hope we can find those communities to help us spread a little joy and do some good in the world.
Bess, thank you. Thank you for being a guest on the show. I appreciate your continued support for all that I do with Career Tipper and now Skills Recharge as well. So thank you.
Oh my goodness. Thank you for having me on.
For sure. And listeners, you can find me, Michelle Beatty, at careertipper.com or skillsrecharge.com. Please listen and subscribe to the podcast on your favorite podcast platform or on YouTube. If you enjoyed this episode or any other episode, please leave us a review, a 5-star review. Just let us know what the episodes mean to you. Thanks for joining us today.